So guys, in this video I'm going to cover Bambu Lab's latest release, firmware release that is, for the X1 Carbon and the Studio. And I think they just put out the release for the P1P also and P1S. But now this release was pretty major. There was a lot of features and a lot of changes that were made, and there were a lot of hot fixes that trailed behind it also. So I thought I would cover some of it in this video. Now at the time of this video, Bambu Lab had just released, what was it? Yeah, their last hot fix that I know of. It was just yesterday. It was 1.7.3. Now there were many issues with this release, but don't let that get to you. I got frustrated. I'm sure everybody got frustrated at one point, but I think it's good that Bambu Lab is adding some more features, making some changes to the software. You know, I think overall it's going to be well worth it and hopefully enhance the user experience in the long run, right? So let's take a look at the release. So when you get on the Bambu Lab wiki, you can see down here software and apps. Let's see where release notes. So you can see the release for 1.7 and then the subsequent hot fixes. And I thought there was like 3 hot fixes, but this is the latest one, the 1.7.3. But when you look at it, you can see this release, it did encompass quite a few new features, and I'll probably not cover all of them, but I can highlight some that I think were fairly major and some that'll be fun to try out, because there was quite a few. And you can see many, and they're stating it here, many of the features, it comes from the Orca Slicer, and that's from Soft Fever, and they have their own wiki page too that you can check out. And I've heard good things about it and about the Orca Slicer, and you know, I'm kind of glad that Bambu Lab is trying to incorporate some of those features into the Studio. Mainly because it gives the user a little more control over the slicing settings, a little more features, right? But it could be a good thing or a bad thing if you think about it. So some users might want more control, while others, mainly some beginners maybe, that they want more of a preset plug and play experience, something that, just like they tout, you know, for marketing on the, say the Bambu Lab, the X1, it's just, you know, you're printing out of the box in 15 minutes, right? But you know, the farther they get into this, it's like, well, they through this release, and it took 4 or 5 days to get it stable and get some prints out of it. And they kept going through and releasing hot fixes, and even here on this latest one, the 1.713, well, they backtracked and reset a lot of the stuff, right? Mainly that from Arachne over back to Classic, and roll back the overhang detection optimization, you know, and it's a little more stable now. But that being said, you know, if you take a look, let's go back. Okay, so some of this stuff can be pretty fun to try, you know, when you're looking at the browsing and printing now is a little more usable. It supports skipping the same model. Some models during the printing, which is great. So if you have multiple items here and one of them starts to mess up, you can pinpoint that one item and it will skip it, right? So that you won't be wasting filament and just throwing it out there. That's a great little feature. device modeling, the mesh boolean. This will be fun to try. So you can see, you can take your shape, put it over, and subtract it from the model. It'll be a fun one to get into and play with here. But they're even saying it may fall on some meshes, including the cone model, and they're working to enhance the stability of his operations. So, that being said, I might play with it, but I'm not going to depend on it, you know. But we'll see how it goes. Hopefully they get that pinned down. And supports more third-party printer profiles. Okay, that's good. Printer selection, sure, that should have been done a while back. I mean, they've had the P1S out for a while, so I'm surprised they didn't have this at the time of the release or before, right? But at least it's there. And that's good, because I have a P1P and I'm about to convert it over to a P1S. And I'll cover that in another video. But what else? Support to display the filament auto refill information. Okay, that'll be handy. What else did I thought was a good one? Yeah, see, there's so much that they tried to include on this release, and I can tell, yeah, this looks pretty good. Enhances print stability by alternating the direction of grid infill paths between layers. So that'll be interesting to see the difference before and after. That looks like a nice little tweak there. But one of the biggest things, okay, this was the thing that they changed the style of the calibration line, and that is great, because the old one, you can see here at the bottom, it took up so much space up here. So this kind of gets it out of the way, and it increases your print area. So, and that's something they took from Orca Slicer too. So, but that's a good one. The one that got me the most, if we go all the way to the top, the Add Flow Dynamic Calibration and Flow Calibration for Bambu Lab printers. So if we take a look, let's see. If we take a look here on Studio, now it has this calibration, the Flow Dynamics calibration. And if you go through and follow the links for auto calibration, and you pick one of the filaments that you have in your AMS or external, and the nozzle diameter you choose, it's just make sure when you're going from like a 0.4, if you have a 0.6 millimeter nozzle, make sure that you program that in on the printer, like the X1. If you don't have on your accessories that you have a 0.6 millimeter nozzle, well, it's not going to find it here. It's going to give you an error message that you have the wrong nozzle. So be sure to go on the X1 and scroll through. You'll find it on your accessories and pick the 0.6. But here you go. You pick out the nozzle, what plate you're using, and pick your filament, or all four if you want, and you go through the calibration. The next phase, let's see, we'll go back. The next phase, it'll basically give you the K value, right? And then you take the K value and plug it in. See, right now they're all at 0, but I can go through here and say my Polymaker ASA, there's the K factor 0.027. Confirm it. Okay. And what else? If I'm using, let's see, I think this ASA was different. Say if we take this, I still have it all under generic, but on the PA profile, this is Overture. and it came out with a .026. So you see, you're assigning the K values. And some guys were loving it. They just, hey, yeah, you can preset it and use it whenever you want, or use it when you're popping in a spool of filament. Well, what if I'm using some totally different filament and I just want to pop it in and print? Do I have to go through this auto calibration and assign the K value, blah, blah, blah? Well, it's not really auto anymore, is it? Now it's just a step away from being the manual. And which, if you look here on the manual calibration, well, it'll go through the manual just like on the P1P, where it gives you all of the samples, and then you pick one yourself for the K value. And that's about the only difference between the manual. You go through the motions, and you pick whatever K value you think will do. On the auto calibration, well, you go through the motions. There's a little different, and then it tells you what the K value is, right? So that's about the only difference between the two. And to tell you the truth, I wasn't too crazy about that, because like I said, well, what if I want to just pop in, say this PLA? What if I wanted to try some PLA carbon fiber, pop it in, and just print away? Do I have to assign that K value, or can I still do, let's see, when I go through and, let's see, let me pick out, let's just pick one of those, it doesn't matter. Okay, it already sliced. So when I'm sending here the options for bed leveling and flow dynamics calibration, well, what's going on with this option here? Can I still opt to go through the automatic flow calibration and not worry about the K value that's assigned back there? Will this override that? So if so, I could just pop some filament in and do this. Or do I have to do, does it matter if I pick that or not anymore, right? It kind of, is it obsolete? I don't know. I wasn't too crazy about the options given us here. You know, tell you the truth, I would rather still be able to pick that, send it off to the printer, and it'll bypass whatever I have set here, right? Because when you think about it, even if I have this same spool, it might behave differently depending on the amount of moisture. I try to keep them dry, but you know, how consistent is that going to be, right? It might be dry when you're, first using the spool. By the time you get down to the, the last 25% of it, is there more moisture on it? Is that K value still going to be the best? I don't know. That's kind of why I would rather use the option here, Yeah, that's just my opinion. I mean, it seems like the change, while some guys like it, I think it took away some of the auto calibration that I liked about the X1 with the LiDAR. When I very first got this, I liked having that auto calibration option. Sure, it added a minute or two to your overall print time, but it was worth it. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of discussions about that. about this. This was one of the main problems when I first, loaded in that latest release, and I troubleshooted everything. I cleaned off my printer, which I keep very clean anyway, because I do use, you can see I do use a lot of ASA, and I keep this printer very clean. I'm well aware that there's fumes, but I also have it vented, and it goes some vent coils on the outside, and it goes outside, right? So it even pumps it out of the printer and it shoots it outside instead of in the room. So I'm well set up for ASA and ABS, but I use ASA a lot. So I printed off everything, I cleaned off everything. I even replaced the nozzle, put a new nozzle in it. I checked the filament, made sure everything was dry. I mean, I was just troubleshooting everything coming down to, and it was just pointing directly at, well, it's got to be the K value. This flow calibration thing doesn't seem to be working. And sure enough, these patches came out, and the latest one here with when you read about the latest release notes, and they've kind of backtracked and and either set some of the options back to where they were before, disabled some stuff until they've tested until they're more confident with the performance and stability. It's like, well, that's great. That should have been done before you ever released this, especially this release with that magnitude, so many changes on there. Yeah, and here's an example of how some of my prints were coming in after loading the first release. And you can see on the edges here, they're curved in, and it just could not hold an edge. On some of it, yeah, some of it did fine, but this whole section here, nah. Maybe I'll have a better close-up for you. But I had a lot of before and after shots, and after I loaded up the fixes and I kept tweaking it. Now this is over a matter of days, right? But then I finally got it down to where I was getting some good calibration cubes, and got to the point where I was trying the PLA and ASA, and they're all coming out good. And even these two benchies that I tried, this one was the very first benchy that I had printed off, the very first print on my X1 Carbon, 8 or 9 months ago, and I still had the same filament from Bambu Lab, and I printed this one off, and they're just identical, right? So I think we finally got it nailed after many days and a lot of tweaking and a lot of hot fixes on the firmware. But it looks like we finally got it. So if you're new to 3D printing and this happens to be your first printer, don't let it get to you. These are great printers, and it was just a couple of hiccups on the firmware, right? Yeah, just don't get too frustrated. But luckily the guys at Bambu Lab, it looks like they're on top of it. They're listening to everybody in the forums, and they pumped out some hot fixes, and I think we finally got it squared away. Yeah, I know on the forums there were quite a few discussions, and everybody was, there were quite a few problems, put it this way. There were, quite a few problems that popped up, but on the other hand, there are a few guys that say their prints are better than ever, and it's kind of a mixed case. And on one forum, I think I read somebody who had 10 printers, and 3 of them were acting up. They upgraded the firmware on them all, but there was just 3 of them that were doing that. It's kind of strange, right? So if everything being the same, I'd be interested to see, well, when were they bought? Were those 3 in one batch and the other 7 were different batches? Did they make some internal changes between them, or were there changes to the board? You know, I don't know. But that might explain why some guys are having good luck with the firmware and there's many that are not. But, well, I guess overall, I guess that was my opinion on the release, especially with the flow calibration. You know, because I did like the option of doing the flow calibration before every print, before I send it to the printer, right? And I think the K value should be assigned at that stage, and it'll save it to your filament unless you override it. So that way, if you don't choose the option before you print, well, you still have that value that was that made from the previous print, you know, to that same filament. Does that make sense? You know, it just seems like it's not as automated now as it was before. Because now it's, you know, they call it auto calibration, but no, you're having to go through all the steps yourself, and then it assigns the K value. You decide, you know, to name it and, you know, file it away. But still, it's not really auto anymore, is it? Unless you use the option for flow calibration before you send it to the printer. Well, I guess that's that. I hope everybody has a handle on this release, and hopefully you're getting good prints, if not better prints now. And I guess that is it for this video. So, as always, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and watch for my next videos. And happy printing.